Welcome, everyone. I'm Angelo Robles. Many of you know me as the founder and longtime CEO of Family Office Association. I had an exit earlier this year in 2023. Some of you may not be as familiar with my new initiatives, specifically SFO continuity, which I don't talk publicly about too often, but it is going to be the focus of our conversation today in terms of the opportunity and directly and somewhat indirectly, because it all ties in, a little bit of a state of the union relative from my perspective, I guess you could say, of maybe what's missing within the family office community. Now, another initiative that I do have that many of you are more familiar with is Family Office Masterclass. Now, SFO continuity, for those who qualify as a family or family office as a charter member, what I do within my master classes as a deep educational platform is all inclusive under SFO continuity. So I do want to talk about this message really is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to be a founding, a charter member. And really, in practicality, that only happens once. So I'm going to focus on that, but I think be very informative and inclusive for many of you as well. So, charter membership for families and family offices. I like to say becoming top 1%. Really, you need to become the best version of yourself as a family member, and of course, a family office. Your benchmark is what you can be compared to what you are now. 99% will not do this. Therefore, that's kind of how you get to the 1% that will, that are competent and that have the opportunity and are looking for results. Effectively, they take action, but they take action on positive things that are going to lead to results. I made a commitment in SFO continuity to limit the founding and charter members to only 20, period. After that, I'm in no rush to grow what I'm doing at SFO continuity. I'm not looking to scale or build a big organization. I want intimacy because I think the opportunity of providing deeper value to families and SFOs is important for me. I know what it's like to run a larger organization relative to what I did and hosting events sometimes with 300 plus people, probably dozens of times around the world. And there's a time and a place for that. But I don't think you could have the level of intimacy, peer to peer, and deep learning that you get when you have the opportunity of hosting something more private. Now, that doesn't mean over time that we're going to only limit it to 20, but there will only be 20 founding, AKA charter members. Perhaps sometime next year, we open it up a little bit to take in members. But again, I am not looking to grow and scale this in numbers. The opportunity to join is exclusive, specifically to families and family offices. I respect those that are thought leaders and providers in the community. Many of you provide excellent services. But there's not an opportunity because I want to keep this, let's go with the word clean, dedicated to family and SFOs, where I don't see the opportunity for those coming in from that perspective. No, there's plenty of other organizations that do that practically, just about all others. So I want to keep this, from my perspective, very pristine and very pure. Again, that does not mean those that provide services don't provide value. I'm not looking for your membership. I'm not looking for your capital from the perspective of SFO continuity. You may be an excellent thought leader in writing, in digital, or possibly in person programming that we do. But I do want to keep it bifurcated and clean from the perspective how I'm evolving it. And I'm firm on that, period. I'm going to outline what I define as some of the challenges and problems and some of the benefits of joining and being a part of my SFO continuity. In the end, talk is cheap, and really all that matters is actions. Really, probably better said, actions that lead to results. Results have to be the end game. within the family office community. So the family office community, broadly speaking, wow, have times changed in my near 20 years in the community. It's now, no one knows for sure, but approximately about 10 trillion. I actually think it's more than that. And things are changing rapidly. What worked in the past is being challenged by a new paradigm of how the world works, ever evolving, higher consequence vulnerabilities, a fragile geopolitical landscape, a fractured global economy, and rising generations in the family with different views, different concerns, and ideas than prior generations. I think the family and the family office must proactively coordinate internal and external resources to evaluate, but also, of course, mitigate risk. And they're investing liquidity, counterparty leverage, operational, geopolitical, taxes, government confiscation, cyber litigation. I think you get the idea. Intrafamily, I could go on and on. In other words, there's a lot of risk. In addition, of course, the family office is, in my opinion, and should be, also entrusted with the intergenerational safeguard of the family's collective values, aspirations, heritage, and legacy. In the end, to me, if I had to make this really simple, this comes down to family and family office continuity, preparing the family. And I think that's an important distinction. Preparing the family, to me, is more important per se than protecting the family, because preparation builds true anti-fragility. To me, this comes down to competency. Competency within the family, especially the rising generation, but of course also within the family office. This relates to capacity, which I could simply define as the ability to adapt. Remember, it's not the strongest or the smartest, but those that are most able to adapt that will not only survive, that will thrive. So capacity and capability. And to me, that all comes down to relating to competency. Again, the greatest threat to the family is the family. Therefore, I ask, in a family office, who is focused on the family? Oh, there may be some ancillary benefits around education and family engagement, but perhaps there should be even one person totally dedicated specifically to the family. And perhaps we could define that as a chief learning officer. I think there's two positions that are very much unheralded, that are incredibly important, perhaps at a little bit more larger scale, more institutional family offices, a chief learning officer and a chief people officer. That is different than HR. That's a lot of political correctness. If you all watched the show The Office back in the day, the Toby character, that's HR. That's not really a chief people officer that is dedicated, no, I'm going to change that word, obsessed with greatness in the family office in terms of bringing on the right people and retaining them. So to me, just mentioning, those are two very important aspects within a family office. Now, how do you ensure family continuity in a myriad, and some of them I already mentioned, of risk, vulnerabilities, and distractions, both inside and outside the family? How do you make rational, objective decisions when many family offices are overly qualitative and not quantitative enough? So that's part of the problem. The three most important factors within a family office include people, easily number one. That is the definitive factor. Systems, which is broadly and can include protocols, processes, standard operating procedures, and then technology. Now, I go back and forth. Sometimes I rank technology number two. Lots are changing in technology. Family offices have become larger and more institutional. They leverage technology. And of course, we have the advent of AI, which is changing many things, including on a global landscape, and is impactful to family offices from a variety of different perspectives. So therefore, with what I described in terms of capacity and capability leading to competency, in terms of all the vulnerabilities and challenges, a challenge, and the fact that people are number one, the challenges to a family office and why the vast majority, let alone don't make it through the generation that creates it. I think the average lifespan is still under 15 years. It's incompetence, not identifying that we all have blind spots. moving ego aside, and broadly, poor governance. And I could argue even inadequate communication. Those are really, like, if I had to lump them or call them the top five, those are all the challenges that lead to family offices becoming inadequate. Now, from there underlies what are the goals of the family, what are the true goals of the family, and anyone that has worked inside a family office will chuckle and understand, by the way, those goals may change, well, maybe not quite every day, but frequently. And the family office, again, has to be nimble and has to adapt. I'd like to talk about that. Unfortunately, we are living in a very dynamic world that is changing rapidly and lots of challenges. We do have what I define as a velocity of destruction, the complexities of going from a unipolar world to not even bipolar with the US and China, but really a multipolar world. When I factor in the BRICS, the rise of India within the BRICS, and other nuances occurring around the world, we have debt burdens that appear to be impossible to repay. BRICS and other challenges, which I already mentioned, the BRICS, of course, Brazil, Russia, China, India, and really now it's like six others. So really it's kind of the BRICS are now 11. And the threat to dollar hegemony, I think, is very significant. So many family offices have, especially here in the US, but really in the Western world and in much of the world, are kind of tied into the US dollar. What happens when that becomes more challenged by what the BRICS and what others are doing? I think that obviously, coupled with the other challenges that I described, debt burdens that appear to be impossible to repay, we have a lot of challenges. We have the impact of AI. I think, let's be optimistic, some of it could be good and might even save us in some of the declining population and the GDP issues. But there definitely is an ugly picture from that as well. Regional and local sourcing of supply chains appear to be returning. We have risk uncertainty, unknown models, as Rumsfeld also said, known knowns and unknown unknowns, and that's a little part about being anti-fragile. In the military, we discuss things like three rings: within view, just out of view, and beyond horizon. So, I give this analogy sometimes. Most family offices kind of truly, to some degree, have no rudder. They have no culture and no true leadership. Two other ways that you could look at that is, are you a historian or are you a revolutionary? And by the way, no disrespect to being a historian. I think that's incredibly valuable and it beats having nothing, but you have an opportunity to realize that the past could rhyme. Look at what happened in the past in terms of how the wealthy were often wiped out in the 1620s English Reformation, the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, and the rise of Nazi Germany. Things could go very, very, very wrong. Understanding history is incredibly important, but you also kind of need to be a bit of a revolutionary. You have to have a chance to peek around corners, to kind of have an idea of what the future could look like. I think it was General Dwight Eisenhower that said, planning never survives first contact with the enemy, but the act of planning, and I think what he really meant was the act of strategy, by the way. If you've been to business school and understand there's planning and there's strategy, they're technically two different. So again, taking this more rigorous approach to the single family office community, I think is sorely, and do I mean sorely, lacking. So the opportunity of becoming a historian is important, but you also have to have some revolutionary inside of you. I remember talking to the most successful trader of all time at Goldman Sachs, especially back during the prop trading days. Like, Angelo, I'm right like 42% of the time. I'm smart. I'm a critical thinker. I have tremendous resources at my fingertips. I do need to make often relatively quick decisions. And I form a thesis and I'm wrong like 58% of the time. I'm like, wow, like, how is that good? Well, I have a couple of bets that work out really, really well, like well over 100x. And again, 42% for what they were doing compared to maybe the average. Well, the average usually flops after a quarter being in there, but maybe good is like 32, 33%. So some of it's all relative. And even Soros spoke about some of these issues relative from an investing perspective as well. It's not how often you're right, or AKA how often you're wrong, but the percentage of losses that you may be mitigating when you're wrong. Meaning you could be right like 90% of the time, but you're right on the small stuff. and the things that really move the needle and matter, you're wrong on. I would say you're probably better turning that around. And that looks again to the advent of being revolutionary. I think for the most part, probably a 70-30 balance between being what I would define as a historian and being a revolutionary is kind of important. Pardon me with some of my verbiage and analogies. I'm very much an amateur philosopher and poet and a big fan of a lot of the greats. Again, that's being a historian and knowing what came before us. There's tremendous gurus out there that have long passed, but they wrote books. So no, it's not the same as one-on-one engaging them, but for sometimes pennies or dollars, we have an opportunity to learn from some of the greats. And I think that's very, very important. Many family offices are finding that their assumptions and strategies, remember, that's different than planning, may not hold up in the face of crisis or profound shifts. And in my opinion, we are definitely going through crisis and profound shifts. And here's where adaptability, which relates to capacity, which relates to capability, which comes down to competency, that adaptability and innovation come into play. Family offices must transition from being reactive to being, I would say, adaptive in their strategies to effectively navigate uncertainty. I think there's certain questions, and these are all things that members of my SFO continuity get all my best content, my research, my thought leadership, and really importantly, the depth of relationships that I have. For instance, being in this community for, really technically over 20 years, but founding FOA many a year ago, meaning Family Office Association, I had an opportunity to meet many, many billionaires, literally over 300 centimillionaires, and over 1,000 single family offices. And some of them I've had lunch with, had dinner, smoked cigars. I like cigars, had a glass of scotch, had fun with, talked business, cried over personal things. I've had everything happen to me during the depth of my career, which has been around a long time within the single family office community. So as I get to know them, and by nature being curious, being inquisitive, hopefully having good IQ, I'm able to learn mindset and traits, and in part what I learned from some of the greats and them to others. And this relates a little bit, which we'll get to shortly, to benchmarking, which is kind of overrated within the family office community, and best practices, which is not overrated and gravely underestimated in the community. But my bigger picture point is the opportunity for me to wow, you're worth billions. I had some that were worth decabillions, one that I did a significant consulting assignment for. Who is your tax people? Because you probably have multiple. Who do you trust for this? Who in finance? Who in your T&E? So building up a Rolodex, what I call a dream team, and not just in the US. I travel to all continents. I'm an active traveler. I do think it's important to have a world perspective. Lots is changing. Why don't we put it that way? So for me to have a global Rolodex, which is still growing, I'm nowhere near I want it to be, but given hopefully my competency in my years in the community, might have a pretty significant, let's call it Rolodex and dream team. So bringing that to bear from an intellectual perspective, and we'll get to the master classes shortly, because that's inclusive for those that qualify and especially come in as a founding charter member in what I built in SFO continuity. And it's pretty straightforward. SFO is single family office. I do think there are variations of a multifamily office as a founder, that possibly it's 2 or whatever, 4, 5, 6, 7 families that band together to share resources. That could be interesting. I'm willing to listen. And again, there are family offices from wealth creators that are having a soon-to-be liquidity event. And some of them do come, given a lot of my background in Greenwich, Connecticut, from the world of Wall Street, from hedge funds, private equity, venture capital, because really both those core coasts, Greenwich and New York, was integral to me for, again, 20 plus years. And I've been incredibly active in Silicon Valley and that community for a long, long time as well. I think there are some questions that need to be answered. Who are we? What are we? Or what are we about? And what is our purpose? Now, I think that's pretty obvious from the perspective of understanding purpose from the family side. Although, again, most family offices are going to fall short on that. Family governance, how joint decisions are made, and the ability Again, capacity and capability leading to competency within the family is going to be the key aspects when it comes to family continuity. But those same questions do have to be answered inside the leadership and culture of the family office. Who are we? What are we about? And what is our purpose? It's not enough just for the family. So I mentioned a little bit earlier about benchmarking and best practices. Benchmarking is horrific currently in the SFO community. It's very haphazard. And suppose you're benchmarking generically to what I would consider below par SFOs. That could also give you a false sense in terms of where you are. Now, it's so hard because to some degree, the goals of the family and the aspirations for the family office are going to be different. So, how do you perfectly align that in benchmarking? And then, how do you get the best of the best family offices to want to openly share? So, now you're comparing, and you may not like the results of how that comes out. So, I think benchmarking could be worthwhile striving for. I think in reality or practicality, which is often lacking in the community, it's very difficult. But best practices, again, when I'm going in to the best of the best, the family office for this person in the Forbes 9, this person in the Forbes 29, that's no guarantee they're going to be great, but it's a little bit of an indication they likely have the resources. So it's an opportunity for me to learn in terms of how they're fulfilling upon the goals within the family, why family continuity is so important, along with everything else that falls under it. Of course, investing, of course, wealth transfer, of course, the family's philanthropic and social mission. All that is important. But the opportunity of understanding what are the best practices of the best absolutely is an opportunity to shed a light on you for the opportunity to get better. The analogy that I sometimes like to give that my audience has probably heard a couple of times, but I think it's kind of worth repeating again, is more likely most SFOs, given the lack of rigor and institutional approach, are probably a little closer, no offense, to being the 12th man. If that's the last person on the team, maybe it's 15, but let's go with 12 on an NBA basketball team. It would be great to get into the 8-man rotation, to get into the starting five, and to be a Michael Jordan or LeBron James. The reality is, in the world of the NBA or professional sports, going from the end of the bench to being the best of the world, it's just not possible. I don't care what you eat. I don't care how you work out. I don't care who your mentor is. You're just not going to be Michael Jordan or LeBron James. There's a specific genetic code to be incredible. If you want to be Shaquille O'Neal, but you're not 7'2", like 370 pounds and that athletic. But I got good news for you in the family office world. You absolutely could. I know it for a fact. You, unless you have like some kind of horrific IQ, but why would you be in a family office anyway? So I'm assuming you have a degree of competency that could get better. But you could go from the proverbial 12th man or woman, whatever. If it's the WNBA, they just had their championship, to being the best. Yes, I'm going to say that. And that relates to a little bit of my maybe hyperbole and over the top initial title and work that I did on becoming top 1%. But what's wrong with that? What is wrong with you looking to get actionable information to get the results that you could be top 1%? Because the industry is lacking a level of mentorship, lacking a level of best practices, and lacking a lot of this. So becoming that, converting from mediocrity to below mediocrity, to becoming good, to becoming great, to becoming truly incredible, for now, is, I think, very possible in broadly the family office world, but especially within the single family office community. There may be a time when that becomes harder and harder, that the quality keeps on rising. And now to be that top 20% and to be better than that, and AKA 1%, becomes very difficult. But at the end of the day, compare you to the best version of yourself. And I think you'll find, as we all should, we all have blind spots, we all have ego that gets in the way. We could all enhance our capability, our capacity, again, equating into quote unquote competency. Identify blind spots, move ego aside, and become the best versions of ourselves. What I will tell you, wildly successful SFOs, Family offices, broadly speaking, are few and far between. Undisciplined family offices don't work. And yes, SFO Continuity, my organization, guaranteed it can help. It's not a guarantee it's going to make you top 1%. Some of that's going to need to come from within you. But at the end of 1 year, I mean, how could you not be better? You're just, again, it's a fragmented industry without necessarily high standards. Don't you want to be great at it? Whether you're the family member, why have a family office if you don't want it to be great? If you're working in a family office, strive for something that's incredible, that makes you a valued commodity and resource. You're able to get enhanced compensation and have a true career track, especially if you're a younger professional in the community. So, yes, every family and family office should strive to be top 1%. Family offices need to figure out the why and the what. Like the what does the future look like and what problems will we face? Now, there are specific strategies to utilize. And again, when you're looking at the future, nothing is going to be 100%. I go back to what I said earlier with the Eisenhower quote that some people will equate to the great philosopher Mike Tyson. We all have a plan until we get hit. But the act of planning, or really strategy, the work that we put in allows us the ability to adapt. So family continuity is only achieved broadly through intergenerational education, competency, and communication. The generations within the family, the language that they talk, the goals and aspirations of the rising generation. I know many of you in the family office world as a professional are more bifurcated on, I'm a finance person, I'm a legal person, I'm an accounting person, and maybe there's a little bit of crossover because sometimes within the family office, as we all know, you have to kind of juggle several different roles. But the opportunity for emotional intelligence, for communication, of understanding the value of governance and how decisions are made, and helping to foster the culture, definitely within the SFO, to be of service to the family, and then helping the family and the rising generations, that is what it all comes down to when it comes to family continuity. I think things like investing are incredibly important. And you also want to mitigate risk. The family is already, I would assume, incredibly rich. They like to remain that way. And look at all the challenges that I mentioned. Wars going on around the world, a massive deficit, political bifurcation. We have a lot of problems. The dollar losing at least some authority. You could wake up one day, depending on the allocations of your portfolio, and absolutely be down significantly, 20, 30, 40%. We've seen it happen before. And no, the family is not going to feel good in that perspective. Depending on the situation, again, preserving wealth. And I know over time, if that's not keeping pace with inflation and taxation, that's going to impact the purchasing power of the family. We know that. But there are some times in short-term scenarios where you need to be adaptable and remember to quote unquote, do the best you could to not lose money, but to not understand the impact of a lot of the things I'm talking about here is truly the reason why it's shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. This has been proven over and over and over again. And this is not just academia. This is not just me reading in books. This is me traveling the world, doing this for decades, knowing some of the biggest families on earth, and seeing how even in my relatively short span, things have changed radically. Maybe a little bit less so applicably for the family office, but I also talk a lot about character. So character within the family, the internal sense of a moral focus and compass, if you want to call it that. Well, of course, that's important for the SFO too. You need to make wise decisions in terms of who you hire, and having a sense of moral character is incredibly important. And the perspective of them to help and be of value. I mentioned the chief learning officer before, and helping the family within the rising generations. To me, those things, both inside and outside the family office, is very important. I would say the core purpose at SFO Continuity is to be the most valued global, very intimate membership organization dedicated to families of wealth and their family office. That's inclusive of access to me, my master classes, which we'll get to shortly, some private digital programming, and including the opportunity for some roundtables, perhaps in-person masterclasses, an opportunity for more getting together. I think, I guess I could probably go into a little bit of a State of the Union, which I've been hinting at here or there, even in when I'm talking about SFO continuity. And I know some of you are going to say, Angelo, you were a founder of FOA, you were there for so many years. How you're describing it now, is that a little part of the problem? Well, when you have an opportunity to take a step back, to be humbled, an opportunity to learn, you develop a different perspective moving forward. I think all of you would agree the vast majority of what is out there in the family office community, it's really not that good. I think for the most part, well, except for maybe one, I think they're well meaning and there's nothing wrong. They deserve to right to be an entrepreneur and to make money in terms of what they do. But if you're a family and you're getting the milk for free, what do you expect? Of course, you're going to have conflicting speakers. The vast majority of them are going to be selling something. The room is going to have a lot of service providers. And a lot of it at the end of the day, maybe after the nuance of early on, it's an experience, is like, it's just one of another of a conference. What's so special about it? So you'll look at it and say, well, yeah, I'm not really learning much from the speakers. And in today's digital world, learning and access to information, even more proprietary in terms of what I provide as, I hope, a deeper thinker and thought leader in the community. It's not just hosting events, but at minimal in hosting an event, which is also inefficient and will take travel and effort in terms of getting there and arguably cost. You also have, you're probably there, just like no cap, like just keep it real, for the opportunity of meeting another family that you can learn something from. But that again goes to best practices. And is that going to be the most efficient way that you're going to get it? I've been to family office programs around the world. Again, I think for the most part, they're well meaning and I'm able to get some level of value from it. But I have to look at it, is it going to be the most effective and, although not always my favorite word, but efficient utilization of my time? I think the answer is no. So for me, the opportunity is providing really deep value through deep education and peer-to-peer. And again, just throwing out names. Like, there's a reason why a lot of decabillionaires use someone like Tom Ward at McDermott to draw up the structures of their family office plan. There's other wonderful people that do that as well. Rich Levine at Withers Bergman, Tom Handler in Chicago, in Switzerland at Baker McKenzie, Martin Michaels. But like, I know who they are. I know the opportunity of the questions to ask. And sometimes I could help benefit and negotiate, if that's the right word, on your behalf as well. So that opportunity in terms of being part of a founding member of a private charter membership organization and then using me, I'm purposely keeping this intimate. I do have time. I could be there to be a resource to you. And that opportunity for me, and what I love to do, really at heart, being an educator and a researcher, probably more than anything else, is very, very important to me. Getting into some of the deeper thinking relative to what I said, relative to risk, family wealth can be depicted, I could argue, as really nonlinear. It's a utility function, as my friend Anik von Ernen has spoken about, of socio-emotional and financial wealth, which a family seeks to maximize. But where there is light, as he states, shadows can be expected, aka family risk. A family office typically assists a family with what? On the risk side, risk identification, risk analysis, and optimal risk responses to mitigate family risk across all domains. And what are the nonlinear combination of those domains? Financial risk, including liquidity, operational risk, and behavioral risk. The first two, there's technologies and more quantifiable metrics. They are imperfect, and there still needs to be other strategies and different ways of thinking to adapt and address them. But behavioral risk, coming back to the greatest threat to the family, is the family, and who in the family office is really dedicated to that, really. And again, you're going to find often that's very, very weak. It's sparse. It's scarce. any word you want to use relative to that perspective. So you need to think through governance. Why do we need family governance? Where does family governance often fail? By the way, you all have a form of governance, whether you have something formal or not. It's just if it's informal and it's that haphazard, you have a really, really bad one. And by the way, even if it's drawn up and more formal, if it's more top down and not inclusive from being quote unquote bottom up, it probably is more of a detriment. It may help to make quicker and easier decisions in the short run. It's not going to be beneficial in the long run. Henceforth, you have to know what you could do differently. Those are very, very important things. I'm a big believer in what I call stress testing, red cell, risk assessment within the family office. So the opportunity for my relationships to have an understanding in terms of what that tabletop type program, as it's called within the consulting industry, could look like, to me is very, very important. And again, I go back to hegemony of the family is always under threat, let alone hegemony of the dollar. That is massively under threat. But you have a world in chaos. You have war. You have inept governments. You have issues with inflation, with rising interest rates in banking. You have really, really serious issues. I didn't even get into the derivative market and the challenge to families that poses as well. No, your money and legacy, and this has been proven time and time again, is absolutely not safe. Not safe. So, and I didn't really have a chance to get into, but the importance of what I call advancements in technology and AI, which I think you'll all agree the vast majority of family offices are far, far behind on. So unfortunately, I think when I couple all this together, I see a family office membership type community as generally a community in decline. There's way more family offices now than ever before when I first started. There's technically more organizations that are servicing them, yet somehow it feels lesser of quality to some degree, as well as more fragmented. I've said it before, I'll say it again. The industry that I'm a part of, and relatively pretty early, but the industry, certainly a shout out to Sarah Hamilton and what she built at Fox, and even amazing people like Jay Hughes and others, friends of mine and deep thought leaders, like that helped to give them a platform, an opportunity to get the mission, to get the word out and provide value. There's very, very few revolutionaries, people that change the dynamic, people that are true original thinkers in this community. So to me, yes, as I stated before, the community I think is in rapid decline. I just look at the number of what I would define as good, let alone very good or excellent family offices, and I go back to they're few and far between. They're way too qualitative, not quantitative enough. On the other hand, you don't want to be 100% quantitative either. There's the element of qualitative and governance and communication with the family. It's the balance of the two that's very important, and unfortunately still gravely lacking. So to me, the opportunity also lies in effectively what I would call cutting edge knowledge and resources. The family office community is my life. It's been my life for ballpark about 20 years. I literally dedicate myself 2 or 3 hours a day, including the weekends, to research and to study on any and all aspects that impact or relate to the family office community. And sometimes you do have to look a little beyond the obvious. It is geopolitical, it is macro, it is economics, it is the opportunity to be a creative thinker, understanding design thinking, take a bigger picture look at the world, and then tie that together to how it could be valuable to my relationship, specifically within SFO continuity. Just because we're taught in the US that the lender model of structures in the family office doesn't mean that that model of creating an SFO, which came to bear more so late in 2017, is going to be the best for everyone. Having the opportunity to be a deeper thinker about the structure of trust, about private trust companies. You have to have an onshore here in the US, but an offshore strategy as well. How to structure offshore trust corporations and foundations, how to structure assets offshore, the value of things even like art and gold. Like these are all important topics that we take deep dives into. We have debates on. I'll have special people from macro and economics, some of them big name figures in private gatherings, and they may be digital relative to my relationships. And I'm not here to sugarcoat it. I'm here to go kind of Joe Rogan on them. One, I'm going to be very prepared. It's going to be deep. It might even be a little intense. And you may walk away with only one valuable idea, even from that 1.5 to 2 hour discussion. And that's okay. You probably should be happy to walk away with just that one quote unquote great idea. So, yes, I do see the value from the in. Digital is very important. The world is moving in that direction. It's wickedly efficient. And that's important, of course. But there still is value to in person, what I would call masterminds, roundtables, and even more social soirees. I do them often around Art Basel, around the Milken Conference in Beverly Hills in May. This upcoming year in 2024 in the Hamptons, the opportunity for private best practice roundtables. All these things are important. Having the collective of even 20 quote unquote founding and charter members provides the capability, even for those that may not be able to make it, the opportunity to do a partial recording or to bring people in digitally, maybe via partially Zoom, are all things that we're looking into and I think would provide value to the community. Now, I know many of you are like Angelo, you love your masterclasses. You talk so glowingly about them. And yes, I do. I'm very proud of them. And again, my masterclass program is inclusive. If you're a charter, a founding member of SFO Continuity, you get all that built in. So yes, I do take pride in my masterclasses. I've been in this community forever. I believe I'm competent, but I, of course, want to always get better. And I chuckle when I see, a 1 hour masterclass or half day. I mean, come on, there's no such thing. So I developed currently 3 masterclasses. I would say 2 of them are effectively ready to go, and 1 of them will be in about 30 to 45 days. I have creating or reimagining into a top 1% family office, and I absolutely mean it. That is the most comprehensive overall masterclass ever dedicated to the family office community. It's not just me as the lead faculty, it's the before mentioned dream team, whether in person or whether digital. And I have an amazing Rolodex and amazing people that I get the best out of them in terms of everything from best practices to technology to people, anything and everything related to becoming a top 1% family office, which is my life. It's my goal. The work I did with a massive family that I briefly described, no one has done in the family office world, even close to the work I've done on sovereign risk and disaster preparedness. I hinted at certain things with onshore and offshore, but it gets way, way deeper than that. And no, just owning gold is, it's like half of 1% of the answer. But even then, how do you properly own it, structure it? Where do you keep it onshore or offshore? And that's a tiny, tiny part. Just like passports, yeah, they're important. You want to have multiple, but that's just a tiny, tiny part. If deca-billionaire families are concerned about this, you should be concerned about it as well. And the work that I've done on that is undeniably the deepest in the community. Also, family offices and AI. I'm considering one on converting your SFO to an MFO. And then I have one that's me and my dream team. You tell me your problem, and we might be able to put together an amazing dream team to address that, like all digitally. So it could be boom, it could be simple and straightforward. And again, wickedly efficient, which in this example does matter. So I'm just not impressed what I see from an educational perspective in the community. And yes, I know what the universities are doing, and they got the big brand behind them, and they got some wonderful professors. And I think on family business issues, I think they're pretty darn good. But I know because I was involved in a couple of them, onshore and offshore again, tremendous amounts of bureaucracy, tremendous political infighting. The universities are heavily skewing to one side of the aisle over the other from their imbalance and political perspective. I'll let you decide what that could be, but I think we'll all agree that that's not good. It needs to be more fair and balanced. Both sides make some sense, and to have something delivered from strictly only one side, well, then you're just focusing on one of your internal biases, which is not helping you learn and to be quote unquote educated, if I could use that word. In some areas, I think they're relatively moderately strong. In some areas, in terms of being practical, like a lot of academia and professors, they stink, period. They just don't have the practical experiences. It's like often when I go to meet some of my hedge fund manager friends in Greenwich and elsewhere, like how do you think they really feel about a lot of economists? I think you kind of know the answer to that already. That doesn't mean they don't respect their intellect. That doesn't mean that there's not some nuggets they glean from them here or there, but they're not in the trenches. Come on. They don't understand it. And they absolutely don't understand best practices in a single family office. I'm also told when I go to speak digitally relatively recently with international programs like, ooh, like you can't bring up any geopolitical issues or talk about that country. I mean, come on, you're handcuffing me. So, no, I'm not going to do it. I don't want to be told what to do. My audience demands that I'm honest with them, that I'm direct. And might my opinion be wrong? Absolutely. But again, all this political correctness, all this being down the middle, all this being vanilla in the family office world, that is not helping. That is not providing true value. That is not giving you best practices. You do not have to like me. That is fine. A lot of people don't like me. My dog loves me, and so does my son. So I do have some advocates, but that doesn't matter, your love or hate or dislike. It's how competent am I in a dream team to deliver maybe even just one amazing thing throughout the year. And then the collective of your peers that are part of the group, and selectively within the dream team, those that are brought in either in person or digitally. It's not about liking. I've been a part of some organizations. I guess one technically by a former president. I can't say that I overly agreed with the morals specifically of that person, but I found the organization and the thought leaders and some of the things I learned there to be of value. So I just think the whole industry has become just very bland. Like everyone plays it safe. Like it's great now that I don't really have a board to answer to, and others I could have freedom in terms of sharing my experiences and my thoughts. And again, you do not have to like me. You do not have to agree with them. But do they help you think through? Do they help in your critical thinking? Do they help in becoming more of a revolutionary, of thinking out of the box? I know that I could provide value. So relative to my pricing in being a charter member, being one of only the first 20, the 21st is not going to have that honor of being the first 20, of being a founder, of being a charter, and they will absolutely pay more money. You're getting a special break. I commit that. The price of my founding members will never, never happen again. I don't care if it's a relative of mine, a great friend. I'm making that commitment and I'm sticking to it. So, yes, I'm looking preferably before the end of the year in terms of reaching my goal of having 20 quote unquote founding and charter members. Nothing's a guarantee. Maybe it ends up taking a little bit longer. And I'm absolutely in no rush to grow that. I'm busy enough doing interviews, what I do in my family office TV, which I just give to the community. There's no profit angle there. And in my master classes, which is more open, especially my digital master classes, which are, and I didn't even mention this, they're like 24 to 28 hours each of instruction. If that was in person, and eventually some of them will be, that's about 4 days, 3.5 to 4 days. Digitally, it could be a complete digital download, which will be available by the first quarter of next year, but I'm going to be teaching it as well once a week over a quarter for each specific one. Why is that a million times better, I think, than a digital download where you get, 28 hours of stuff dumped on you? It's because you get to interact. What you see and what you hear in the masterclass to some degree, like reading an amazing book by a so-called guru or a legendary figure or about that person, it's what you imagine from it. And that's the incredible thing, especially even if it's digital, about being immersed, about asking questions, about being part of the case study, the group exercises, lecturing. That's a part of it and a kind of an important part, but that's just a part of it. Do you learn how to play football or baseball by reading a book? Or do you have to immerse yourself in it and get some handholding, I would hope, by whatever, a coach, a mentor, a guru, someone who has qualifications that could help to engage with you and make you better? So, yes, I'm passionate about what I do because I love this community. I live and breathe it 24/7. I dare someone to challenge to say that they put in more than I do. Have I always been perfect? Far from it. Did I have a little bit of a period? I could argue during my last year at FOA, at Family Office Association, where I just crushed it and I was Mr. Perfect. Far from it. I'm humbled. I've made mistakes. I'm incredibly excited moving forward. I am still young. I've never been in the shape that I am now. I guess during COVID, I had too much time to work out and change a lot of my habits. So this is really exciting to me. I take what I know, what I'm going to know moving forward. I want to be the best version of myself, which I'm still not at yet. And that opportunity for me, coupled with my Rolodex, AKA my dream team, this has never been a more exciting time. And for the amount of money, which is overly modest, that I'm charging to be a founding and a charter member and the value that you're going to get out of it, I think it's, in my opinion, call me a little bit jaded in my perspective, but I kind of think it's a no-brainer. Like I just am, broadly speaking, again, not impressed by the vast majority of what I see out there. If you think just going to an event, eating mediocre food, hearing conflicted speakers, and many of them bad at speaking and educating anyway, like that is good, like that is something valuable, really, I just don't get it. And again, I'm respectful for the organizations and people that came before me that helped to pave the way. I mentioned Sarah Hamilton before, the founder and chairman at Fox, an amazing talent and a revolutionary. Charlotte Beyer at RPI, and even the old guard chaps at Triple C. I got to tip my hat and respect for the work they did coming before me and the path that they built moving forward. I'm greatly appreciative to them, and that helped to motivate and push me, especially earlier on at Family Office Association. And now looking back and taking the combination of historian plus revolutionary, and to me, that's important, kind of combining the two. I'm really excited moving forward. I hope you want to join me. I'm part of this journey. You can reach me at angelorobles.com. Email is very simply from that, Angelo at angelorobles.com. And my God, I've had the same phone number since well before, multiple decades. I was early on in cell phones. Like I had one of those big car phone things too. God, I'm really old, but I'm loving it. Never felt better. So it's 203-570-2898. Or in today's modern world, especially the younger ones, just DM me. I'm active on all platforms. I'm really excited. Thank you for listening to my message. I'm going to take a quick look because we might have had some things come in via the chat feature. Okay, I'm back. Okay. No, not too much. And again, I wanted to keep this very intimate today. Some of it was hand selected in terms of invites only. I hope you had a chance to enjoy it. I don't like to, spend 85% plus of the time talking about exactly what we're doing as an offering. But at the end of the day, if that offering is incredible, if I know that it provides value to the community, and I know that I give back a lot of other content simply for free to the community, I think it's fair that I have the opportunity occasionally in terms of talking more publicly about the work that I'm doing in the enterprise or enterprises that I'm building. And I hope you agree the value that it provides. You can reach out to me anytime. Again, thank you for watching or listening. I'm Angelo Robles, and have a great day.